I didn't raise my voice when Garrett slid the folder across the conference table and told me without even looking up, "Your promotion review has been removed from the agenda." No explanation, no apology, just the quiet expectation that I'd swallow it the way I'd swallowed every weekend emergency, every crisis he couldn't handle, every promise they'd dangled in front of me for years. What he didn't realize was that this time I wasn't just disappointed. I was finally done, and I had something he never expected me to use. My name's Glenn Morrison. I'm 49 years old, and for 13 years I'd walked through the gates of Hartwell Steel believing that hard work still meant something in this country, that showing up early, staying late, and keeping a 350-employee plant running smoothly would eventually earn the respect and promotion I'd been promised again and again. I'd built my career the way men my generation were taught to trust. No shortcuts, no politics, just results. I came to Hartwell after 6 years in the Army, where I'd learned logistics the hard way. Managing supply convoys in Kuwait, coordinating equipment shipments across 3 time zones, making sure ammunition got where it needed to go when people's lives depended on it. You learn fast in the military that when you screw up supply chains, people die. That discipline never left me. When I started at Hartwell as a shift supervisor making $42,000 a year, I brought that same precision to everything I did. Steel manufacturing isn't like other industries. You're dealing with furnaces running at 2,800 degrees, molten metal that can kill you if you make one wrong move, and delivery schedules that automotive companies treat like gospel. One delayed shipment of steel coil to Ford means their entire assembly line shuts down, costing them $50,000 an hour. By the time they made me senior operations manager 8 years ago, I knew every inch of that plant, every worker by name, every pressure point in our supply chain that could turn a small problem into a $1 million disaster. When a crisis hit, people didn't call Garrett Price, our VP with his fancy MBA from Northwestern. They called me. The blast furnace computer system crashes at 2 a.m. That's my phone ringing. Raw iron ore shipment gets delayed by rail problems in Minnesota. I'm the one coordinating emergency trucking. Union rep threatens a walkout over safety concerns. Somehow, I'm always the one sitting across from Big Jim Patterson at 6 a.m., working out a solution over coffee and donuts before Garrett even knows there's a problem. I was the one who redesigned our entire winter production schedule after the February 2019 freeze nearly shut us down. While Garrett was panicking in his heated office, I was on the floor with the maintenance crew, figuring out how to keep the cooling systems from bursting when it hit -20 for 5 straight days. That protocol saved Hartwell $800,000 in penalty fees and equipment damage. Did I get credit? Hell no. Garrett presented it to the board like it was his brilliant strategic thinking. I was the one who negotiated new iron ore supplier contracts when COVID sent raw material prices through the roof. Spent weeks on the phone with mines in Michigan and Minnesota, building relationships, finding alternative sources when our primary supplier couldn't deliver. Garrett would show up to the final contract signings, shake hands, take photos for the company newsletter. Meanwhile, I'd already been doing his job for months. My team knew the real story. Barry Coleman, my best production coordinator, would shake his head and say, "Glenn, you're keeping this whole place running while that guy takes all the credit." Catherine Wells, in quality control, sharp as a tack, always said, "If you ever leave here, I'm right behind you. These people don't deserve what you give them." At home, my wife Susan could see what it was doing to me. 24 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs. The blood pressure medication on the bathroom counter multiplying from 1 bottle to 3. The way I'd sit at the kitchen table after dinner, going over production reports while she cleaned up, my jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. "You're killing yourself for people who don't appreciate you," she'd say, watching me answer yet another crisis call during Alan's birthday dinner or Lisa's graduation party. But we had 2 kids finishing college. Alan wrapping up mechanical engineering at Penn State. Lisa in her junior year studying business at Ohio State. College tuition runs $45,000 a year each, and on my $78,000 salary, I couldn't afford to rock the boat. Not when we still had 4 more semesters to pay for. Besides, Garrett kept promising the VP promotion was coming. Just waiting for final board approval, he'd say. Budget planning cycle, or restructuring timeline, whatever excuse bought him another few months of me doing his job while he collected the credit and the $140,000 salary that should have been mine. The meeting that changed everything was scheduled for 3 p.m. on a Friday in March. Garrett had labeled it Final Review and Transition Planning in his calendar invite. I'd been rehearsing how I'd accept the promotion professionally, maybe even thank him, even though we both knew I'd earned it years earlier. What I didn't rehearse was how to respond to what actually happened. Garrett was staring at his laptop when I walked into the conference room, tapping his Mont Blanc pen like he was waiting for an Uber, not meeting with the guy who'd kept his plant operational through every crisis of the past decade. The conference room still smelled like stale coffee from the morning production meeting, and through the windows I could see the afternoon shift change happening on the floor below. "Have a seat," he said, still not making eye contact. We'd had hundreds of meetings over the years, but never one that felt this wrong. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm when you know something bad is coming. Finally, he closed the laptop, leaned back in his ergonomic chair, and let out this dramatic sigh like he was carrying the weight of the world. "I'm going to be straight with you," he said, which should have been my first warning. In my experience, when someone starts with that phrase, they're about to lie to your face. The board decided to pause the VP expansion indefinitely. I sat there for a moment waiting for him to clarify, to say something like temporarily or until next quarter. He didn't, just kept tapping that expensive pen like he was keeping time to some song only he could hear. "Garrett," I said, keeping my voice steady even though something cold was spreading through my chest. "The promotion package was already approved 3 months ago. You told me last week the final step was just documenting the transition timeline." "These things happen," he replied with a shrug that reminded me of my teenage son making excuses for a dented fender. "Priorities shift, budgets tighten, we all have to adapt." Adapt. That word hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. I'd been adapting for 13 years, adapting to being overlooked while less qualified guys got promoted over me, adapting to doing work 2 levels above my pay grade every time there was a crisis, adapting to every late-night emergency call while Garrett played golf on weekends. My adaptation was the only reason Hartwell Steel was still profitable instead of joining the dozen other regional steel companies that had gone under in the past 5 years. "I understand budget changes," I said, and I could hear the edge creeping into my voice. "But I'm already handling VP-level responsibilities. The blast furnace efficiency improvements, the new safety protocols, the Ford contract renegotiation, that's all me. If the title gets delayed, shouldn't compensation reflect what I'm actually doing?" That's when he finally stopped tapping the pen and looked at me directly. For just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Not regret, exactly. More like the look my dog gets when he knows he's about to get yelled at for pissing on the carpet. "The board wants roles and compensation to remain aligned with organizational structure," he said, and I could tell he was reading from some HR script he'd memorized. "Once the VP position opens up again, you'll be first in line. I can promise you that." First in line. I'd been first in line for 3 years, watching that promise get pushed back quarter after quarter while I kept the plant running and he kept taking credit. It was like being told you're next for a table at a restaurant while watching them seat every other customer who walked in after you. "So after 13 years, I said quietly, and my voice sounded different even to me, "you're telling me the board suddenly decided we don't need operational leadership at the VP level?" "Not permanently," he said quickly. "Just for now. Be patient, Glenn. You're valuable here. Keep doing what you're doing, and when the time is right..." There it was, the line every exploited worker eventually hears. "Keep doing what you're doing." Translation: stay quiet, don't ask questions, carry the weight so we don't have to pay you what you're worth. Something inside me just broke. Not dramatically, not like some movie scene, more like when a support beam finally gives way after years of holding up more weight than it was designed for. Clean, quiet, and permanent. I gathered my notebook, stood up, and said, "Thanks for letting me know." My voice was calm and steady, and Garrett, comfortable in his expensive chair, had no idea he'd just lit the fuse on the biggest mistake of his career. The drive home felt different somehow. I'd made that same 20-minute trip through industrial Cleveland thousands of times, past the other manufacturing plants, the railroad yards, the neighborhoods where guys like me raised families on steel industry wages. But today, I wasn't just driving home. I was driving away from something that was already dead. Susan took one look at my face when I walked through the kitchen door and knew. We'd been married long enough that she could read my expressions like a weather map. She poured 2 cups of coffee without asking, and sat down across from me at the table where we'd made every important decision of our marriage. "They killed the promotion," I said. She didn't act surprised. "Susan's always been smarter about people than I am." "What do you want to do about it?" "I want to find somewhere that actually respects what I bring to the table," I said. She reached across and squeezed my hand. "Then let's find it." That night, after we'd gotten Lisa on the phone to tell her not to worry about tuition money, though we were both worried as hell, I opened my laptop and started going through emails I'd been ignoring for months. Recruiters, former colleagues, people who'd left Hartwell and kept telling me, "Glenn, you're too good for that place. They're using you." I'd always brushed them off, telling myself Hartwell would come through eventually. Now those subject lines looked different. Senior leadership opportunity, VP position available. Your experience is exactly what we need. Most were the usual recruiter spam, but one caught my attention. It was from 3 weeks ago, from Peter Hayes, CEO of Summit Manufacturing. I knew the name from industry conferences. He'd built Summit from a small regional operation into a serious player, known for treating people right and promoting based on merit instead of politics. The subject line was simple. Interested in real leadership authority? I clicked it open. "Glenn, I've followed your work at Hartwell for years. Your operational innovations and crisis management have become talking points in our executive meetings. Your winter production protocols saved you guys nearly $1 million in 19, and everyone in the industry knows who really designed those systems. If you're ever open to leading at a higher level with a company that backs up promises with action, we have a VP operations position that needs someone with your experience and judgment. I'd value the chance to speak with you. No games, no politics, just straight talk about a real opportunity." I read it twice. Direct, clear, respectful. No bullshit about when the time is right or budget cycles. A real offer from someone who didn't need 3 months to figure out what I was worth. My hands were shaking slightly when I typed back, "Peter, thank you for reaching out. I'm available this weekend if you still have time to talk." I hit send at 9:43 p.m. By 10:15, my phone buzzed with his response. "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Summit headquarters. Looking forward to meeting you in person." I showed Susan the exchange. She smiled for the first time all day. Looks like somebody recognizes talent when they see it. Summit Manufacturing sat on the south side of town, all clean lines and modern equipment. Nothing like Hartwell's brick fortress that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1975. Even the parking lot was different. Actual painted lines, decent lighting, cars that weren't all 15 years old and held together with duct tape and prayer. Peter Hayes met me in the lobby personally. Firm handshake, direct eye contact, the kind of presence that tells you immediately this guy doesn't waste time on corporate theater. He was probably 10 years younger than me, but something about him reminded me of the best officers I'd served under in the Army. Confident without being arrogant, direct without being harsh. "Glenn," he said, and his voice was warm but businesslike. "I'm glad you came. Let's go talk about your future. Not let's see if you're a good fit, or let's explore possibilities. Your future. Like it was already decided, and we were just working out the details." We walked through his facility on the way to his office, and I could see immediately why Summit was growing while other companies struggled. Everything was organized, efficient, clean. Workers looked engaged instead of beaten down. Equipment was modern and well-maintained. This wasn't just a job shop trying to survive. This was a company built to compete and win. Peter's office had windows overlooking the production floor, and I could see him watching his operation while we talked. That told me everything I needed to know about his leadership style. He wasn't hiding in some executive suite. He was connected to the work that actually made the company money. We sat down in his office, and Peter opened a folder that made my jaw drop. It was full of my work, process diagrams I'd developed, efficiency reports I'd written, safety protocols I'd designed, stuff that Hartwell acted like appeared out of thin air, but Peter had studied it like it mattered. "Glenn, I've been analyzing your systems for years," he said, spreading out copies of reports with my name on them. "Your winter production protocol didn't just save Hartwell money, it's been copied by half the steel plants in the Great Lakes region. Your blast furnace optimization increased their efficiency 12% while reducing energy costs. That's not luck, that's engineering brilliance." I sat there staring at my own work laid out on his desk, work that Garrett had presented to Hartwell's board like it was his strategic vision. Peter knew exactly who had created what, and more importantly, he gave a damn. "The thing is," Peter continued, You've built Hartwell's operational stability, but they'll never give you real authority because your competence threatens their comfort. They need you doing the work, but they can't handle you having the power. It was like hearing someone explain a puzzle you'd been trying to solve for years. At Hartwell, everything was half said, half promised, wrapped in corporate speak that meant nothing. Here, everything was direct and honest. Here's what I'm offering, Peter said, sliding a contract across his desk. Not a preliminary discussion, not an invitation to more meetings. An actual contract with real numbers on it. Vice President of Operations, $105,000 base salary, performance bonuses that can add another $20,000, full authority over production scheduling, supplier relationships, and personnel decisions. No interference from above, no committee approvals for operational changes. You run it, you own it. My throat went tight, but not from emotion, from recognition. This was what respect looked like. This was what leadership was supposed to feel like. Not begging for approval, not waiting for budget cycles, not being told to be patient while they handed opportunities to people who couldn't find their ass with both hands. Why me? I asked. Because you've already been doing this job, he said simply. The only things you've been missing are the title, the authority, and someone who appreciates what you bring. I've got a $50 million operation here, Glenn. I need someone who understands that when the blast furnace goes down, every minute costs us $3,000. Someone who knows the difference between managing and leading. You've been leading at Hartwell for years. They just never bothered to notice. I looked out his office window at Summit's production floor. Clean, organized, workers moving with purpose instead of just trying to survive until quitting time. Equipment that looked like it belonged in this century. A place built to win, not just hang on. What about my team? I asked. I've got people at Hartwell who've been with me for years. Peter leaned back in his chair. If you know good people who deserve better than what they're getting, I'm ready to hire. Good talent follows good leadership, and good leadership doesn't leave people behind. That sealed it for me. I thought about Barry Coleman, who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times because he didn't kiss ass the right way. Catherine Wells, whose quality control innovations had saved Hartwell millions but never got her more than a good job and a 3% raise. Mason Brooks, who knew our steel specifications better than anyone but got treated like just another hourly worker. I signed that contract before doubt or habit could talk me out of it. Peter stood up, shook my hand, and said, "Welcome to Summit. When can you start?" 2 weeks' notice at Hartwell, I said. He smiled. "Take your time. Do it right." And Glenn? The people who didn't value you are about to learn what they lost. The drive back to Hartwell felt like driving to my own execution. 13 years of my life in that building, and now I had to walk in there and quit. But for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about the future. I was excited about it. I found Garrett in his office, same expensive pen, same laptop, same attitude. "How'd your weekend go?" he asked without looking up. "Good," I said. "I need to give you my resignation. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately." That got his attention. His head snapped up like someone had slapped him. "What? Glenn, what are you talking about?" "I'm taking the VP position at Summit Manufacturing," I said, and I kept my voice calm and professional. "Today's Monday. My last day will be Friday the week after next." The color drained from his face. "Summit? Glenn, they're our competitor. You can't just... We need to talk about this. Your promotion, we can accelerate the timeline." "What promotion?" I asked. "The one that got indefinitely postponed last Friday? The one that's been almost approved for 3 years?" He started talking fast, words tumbling over each other. "The board meeting next month, we can put it back on the agenda. Full VP package, salary increase, everything we discussed." "Garrett," I said quietly, "you had 13 years to do the right thing. I'm not interested in panic decisions now." I set my resignation letter on his desk and walked out. Simple, clean, final. No drama, no burned bridges, just a professional ending to a relationship that should have ended years earlier. The word spread through the plant by lunch. People stopped by my office all afternoon, some congratulating me, others looking worried about what would happen after I left. Barry Coleman sat in my guest chair for 20 minutes, not saying much, just shaking his head. "This place is going to fall apart without you," he said finally. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe they'll figure out how to treat the people who do the work." That night at dinner, Susan raised her wine glass. "To my husband," she said, who finally stopped settling for less than he deserves. Alan called from Penn State that evening. Dad, you really quit? Just like that? Just like that, I said. Sometimes you reach a point where staying costs you more than leaving. That's badass, Dad. Good for you. My son thought I was badass. At 49 years old, I was finally doing something that made my kid proud of me. That felt pretty damn good. I started at Summit on a Monday morning in April, walking into my own office with windows overlooking the production floor. Real windows, not the basement cave they'd stuck me in at Hartwell. No stacks of crisis reports on my desk. No emergency voicemails from the weekend. No Garrett hovering around pretending he knew how to keep things running. By 9:30 a.m., my personal phone was buzzing like crazy. Text from Barry Coleman. Submitted my resignation this morning, 2 weeks' notice. Then Catherine Wells. Just quit. Garrett's losing his mind. Then Mason Brooks. I'm out too. This place is done. I hadn't said a word to any of them about leaving. Didn't recruit them, didn't promise them jobs, didn't even hint that they should follow me, but good people don't stick around when they're treated like crap, and they don't stay loyal to companies that waste their talent. At 10:15, my office phone rang. Garrett, and his voice was already shaking. Glenn, what the hell is happening? 3 people resigned this morning. 3 of your people. I heard, I said, keeping my tone neutral. That's unfortunate. Did you talk to them? Did you encourage this? They're adults, Garrett. They make their own decisions. Heavy silence on the other end. The kind of silence you hear when someone finally realizes they're in deep trouble. We need to talk about your situation, he said, and I could hear the desperation creeping in. Your promotion. We can fast-track it. Full VP package, immediate implementation. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Summit's our competitor, Glenn. You can't just take our operational knowledge and... I'm not taking anything, I cut him off. Everything I know, I learned through 13 years of you not listening to me. You want to keep that knowledge? You should have valued the people who had it. I hung up before he could respond. The thing about operational collapse is it doesn't happen overnight. It starts small. A procedure that nobody remembers, a supplier relationship that goes sour, a safety protocol that gets overlooked. Within a week of my team leaving, Hartwell's carefully maintained systems started showing cracks. Barry had been handling the complex scheduling for our automotive clients. Without him, they tried to use some generic software that didn't account for steel cooling times or furnace capacity limits. Result? A delayed shipment to Ford that triggered $45,000 in penalty fees. Catherine had been managing quality control relationships with our biggest clients. Her replacement didn't know that Chrysler required different testing procedures than GM. Another $30,000 in rejected shipments. Mason had been coordinating with our iron ore suppliers, relationships he'd built over 8 years of getting to know the right people at the mines. His replacement ordered the wrong grade of ore for a specialty steel run. Entire batch had to be scrapped, $80,000 down the drain. By the end of week 2, I was getting calls from former colleagues still at Hartwell. Glenn, nobody knows how the winter scheduling system works. Garrett's trying to figure it out from your old notes, but half the supplier contacts have changed. Then, the quality control protocols you wrote? They can't find the updated versions. They're using procedures from 2019. I didn't respond to any of it. Not my company, not my problem. At Summit, meanwhile, Barry, Catherine, and Mason were thriving. Real budgets for their departments, authority to make decisions without committee approvals, leadership that listened to their ideas instead of dismissing them. Peter Hayes gave them the resources they needed and got out of their way. Revolutionary concept. 3 weeks after I'd left, Garrett called again. This time he sounded like a man drowning. Glenn, I'm going to be straight with you. We're in serious trouble. Operations are falling apart. Clients are threatening to cancel contracts. We've lost 5 more people this week. We need you back. I looked out my office window at Summit's production floor, running at 98% efficiency under systems I was already improving. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Not sorry for Garrett, but sorry for the good people still stuck there dealing with the mess. We can offer you anything, he said, words tumbling over each other. VP title, $120,000. Equity package, complete operational authority. Name your terms. It was almost funny hearing him offer everything he'd claimed was impossible just a month earlier. Garrett, I said quietly, you told me the budget wouldn't support a VP position. You said the timing wasn't right. Things changed, he snapped. Yes, they did. They changed because the people who built your success finally left. We can't survive this without you, he said, and his voice cracked like a teenager asking for help. "Then you should have thought of that before you took me for granted," I said. "Good luck." 6 months later, Hartwell Steel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Industry analysts traced their collapse directly to the departure of key operational personnel and management's failure to retain institutional knowledge. The business school at Case Western started using their case study as an example of how not to manage talent. Summit Manufacturing, meanwhile, landed 3 major contracts that Hartwell had lost. We hired 12 new people, including several refugees from the chaos my former employer had become. Peter promoted me to Senior Vice President after our most profitable quarter in company history. At the Regional Manufacturing Conference last fall, I was invited to speak about operational leadership and employee retention. The room was packed with middle managers, tired faces, hopeful expressions, guys who looked exactly like I used to look. I told them what someone should have told me years earlier. Document every promise your company makes to you. Pay attention to what leadership does, not what they say. And understand that when an organization keeps delaying your advancement, what they're really telling you is they don't see you in their future. They nodded, like they recognized their own stories. What I learned isn't complicated. Loyalty is valuable, but only when it goes both ways. The moment it becomes one-sided, you're not being loyal. You're being taken advantage of. I spent years thinking patience was a virtue, that hard work would eventually be rewarded. But respect isn't something you earn by waiting. It's something you demand by knowing your worth. For guys like me who were raised to keep your head down and do the work, that's a hard lesson. But it's necessary. Your value isn't determined by what your boss says or what promises they make to keep you quiet. It's determined by what you accomplish, who trusts you, and what standard you hold yourself to. If this sounds familiar, if you're stuck somewhere that treats your dedication like weakness, don't wait for them to change. Change your situation. The life you want isn't found in the comfort of being needed. It's found in the courage of being respected.